So tonight I thought we would talk a little bit about putting, and more so not the fundamentals of putting, like when people think of putting stroke, but I'm talking more about the way people think on the putting green and how I think a lot of people actually comprehend differently on the putting green or put different pressures or things along that lines that can really be detrimental to performance. My hypothesis, Mike, and you let me know how wrong I am with this one, is because as we get closer to the hole, every stroke matters more. So once we get on the putting green, we can flare a drive at 250 and we don't care. We can hit a bad approach shot that ended up buried in a bunker. But man, once we get on that putting green and we start getting really close to that hole, boy, the closer we get, the more pressure and the more importance every shot is kind of the player. And that can be just absolutely brutal. So Mike, what do you think of my hypothesis of why people view putting different?
No, I think you're exactly right.
Show us.
Let's take a drink to your theory.
Cheers.
Okay, let's talk about that a little bit more, because this is a very common tendency that we all have whenever we get close in time to a period in which a reward can either happen or we could lose it. We can either have a success or we can have a failure. And there's a lot of research on this actually in cognitive psychology and in behavioral economics. So basically, as we get closer and closer to some end point, and that's the key thing, is some end point. And an end just means there's going to be some reckoning one way or another. And that is what's happening on that putting green. And so what happens then is, as we get closer and closer to that, the value of that reward and the fear possibly of the anti-reward or the failure goes up and up. So as the value goes up, then we have that chance to flip an excitement situation where we can make a putt or have something good happen and then flip it to the other side of it. And so, yeah, I would have to say that I think that is what's special about putting, and what it probably for a lot of people some of the most challenging aspects of the game.
What are your thoughts, Chris?
Yeah, I definitely agree with that side of the focal point. I would add to that, as the distance decreases, the expectation of success increases. So the closer you get to the hole, regardless of player level, your expectation of you being successful goes up. I would also throw in there realistic expectations, and that's matched up with your skill level, right? So, tour players make, we'll call it ish 48 to 50% of 8-footers. And again, that's based on distance. That doesn't have a lot to do with the slope or the difficulty of the putt. That's a topic for just a strictly putting discussion, maybe later. But, the ability to understand that if you have an 8-footer, you need to know that even on your world's best day, you could miss 50%. So let's say that you're a 15 handicapper. Your percentage isn't going to be 50%. It's going to be far less than that. So know that you're going to miss more than you make. But as you practice skill acquisition, performance games, technique, all those kinds of things go into the process of success, so that you don't have to rely on hope when you get to that moment when you want to make the putt.